What is the safest place in the world for black families? Some find American dream, abroad. The safest place in the world may be more easily measured for some than others. Iceland, for instance, ranks as the safest, most peaceful country on the 2022 Global Peace Index. But the majority white country still struggles with the issue of racism, as do many of the other high-ranking, peaceful, and happy countries. A 2020 Gallup poll found that 40% of black Americans do not feel safe in their community at night, compared to 16% of white Americans. And a 2022 Pew Research poll found 32% of black Americans worry regularly about being attacked or threatened because of their race. What is the safest place in the world for black Americans? For some black Americans, the search for the safest place begins outside of the U.S. Kara West, a travel blogger, left the U.S. with her husband and young daughter in the summer of 2022 in search of a different lifestyle. Before moving, the family lived in Austin, Texas, a city with skyrocketing rent prices and an ever-rising cost of living. West and her husband were working opposite schedules to avoid paying for childcare. Then she learned that colleagues at her former company, based in Germany, were getting much larger maternity leave packages living abroad than she was in the U.S. I looked at him 3 months postpartum and I was just like, it shouldn't be this hard, West says. We can have the American dream outside of America. There are lots of reasons why some black families, especially black women, are looking to live elsewhere. It's not just healthcare. West says it was the shooting in Uvalde that was her last straw. There have already been 377 mass shootings in 2023, the Gun Violence Archive reported in July 2023. In Portugal, where West and her family live now, there were only 97 cases of voluntary manslaughter in 2022. So many black women are ready to get out of the United States, West says. Candace Salters moved to the United Kingdom for college in 2016. She says as a black person, living outside the U.S. relieves certain daily anxieties, especially around gun violence. There are about 120 guns for every 100 people in America, but only about 5 guns per 100 people in the UK. But racism extends far beyond U.S. borders. Finland may rank as the happiest country in the world, but a 2018 study found 63% of people of African descent experienced racially motivated harassment compared to around 30% in other European Union countries. The search for community abroad. One way black Americans are finding safety abroad is through community groups found on social media sites like Facebook and TikTok with searches like Black Expat In. She also uses the Expat app, a platform designed for black people working and living abroad. Green Book Global, a black travel review and booking site, has emerged as another resource. Created by Lawrence Phillips after word-of-mouth recommendations transformed his travel experiences, it was named after The Green Book, a Jim Crow-era publication that shared safe places for black travelers during segregation. Phillips recalled running into a fellow black traveler outside his hostel in Paris who suggested he check out Belgium. Salters also drew on personal experiences to compile a list of the 9 best cities for black women to live in, which includes locations in Thailand, Norway, South Korea and Panama. The roundup was inspired by her time in Thailand when she attended a Juneteenth party and was surprised to see the number of black Americans finding a community there. Personal experiences are not a one-size-fits-all, Salters adds. Both preference and circumstance can drastically change your perception of a place. For example, Salters had seen reports of black Americans traveling to Asian countries and having a bad experience or being racially harassed. Black first and American second. Using community resources to move abroad helped West narrow down her search, she says. West found a lot of black expats in Latin America. European countries also have a large presence of black expats. For Salters, taking into account diversity and racial tension in a country was important to feel safe. While the UK is no stranger to structural racism, Salters says being part of an international hub in the UK feels different than in America. West feels similarly about Portugal, where she says living among people of diverse ethnicities and nationalities makes her feel more safe and more comfortable. She and her husband also noticed a difference in the way families are treated in Portugal. She regularly gets priority seating or gets to skip long lines while traveling with a baby. You could compare the livability outcomes for black women, which show Washington, D.C., Boston, Baltimore and Raleigh scoring highest in Cleveland, Pittsburgh and Augusta, Georgia at the bottom. You could take into account the Census Bureau's diversity metrics by state. How about the biggest and smallest wealth gaps by race and ethnicity in different U.S. states? Or the top cities for being black and rich, according to an analysis of household income? Sometimes that information comes in the form of a warning, like his lists of suspected sundown towns. There are no officially documented sundown towns today, but Phillips says it's more about taking stock of which places have a legacy of racism. Above, also on the bottom of the list, are West Virginia, Arkansas and New Mexico. The data has some limitations. Some cities rank much higher than their overall state, which indicates tremendous wealth and income segregation, Langston says. And some states with overwhelmingly white populations may see smaller racial gaps, namely Maine, Vermont or New Hampshire. What does it mean to call a place safe? After listicles, reviews, personal accounts on social media and even data-based indexes, we're still left with the question, what does it mean to call a place the safest? As long as racism endures as a structural part of many countries, many ask, is there a safest place for black people? Langston hopes future research will further break down equity and safety metrics and consider crime, the effects of climate change, pollution, traffic, sidewalks, walkability, health and more to answer that question.